Right. Wednesday. Can you believe it? August 13th of 2025 already. I mean, this month is just flying. That just means we're that much closer.
To
Wow.
what's happening? Is there something going on soon?
Yeah, you know, is it a new tour?
It's a new moon.
It's a new moon. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. From the start of football. Rob Brown in Memphis. Brendan Martin, Ocala, Marion County, Limestone in horse capital of the world, the best executive producer on the planet. We got a lot to cover today. Got Dr. Bill Hardgrave, president, University of Memphis, Kevin Scarbinsky, nationally acclaimed columnist, basketball Hall of Fame writer in Birmingham. Then we'll have Dudley Dawson, hogville.net in the second half, along with Vince Ferrara up on the hill in Knoxville. The sports animal. I love it, man. And he's recovering. Said he's feeling better. Some days are better than others with the hip surgery, but Vince is tough, and he'll be back. Hey, take a picture with your cellular phone of the QR code. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and then Brendan's putting this stuff on Reels, and it's going everywhere. And this channel, sun up to sundown, has the best coverage you'll find anywhere on the SEC.
Coast to coast.
Coast to coast, and everywhere in between. That's right. Hey, and look, if you are traveling, by the way, I got to give a shout out to Miss Vivian Glover down at the Hampton Inn on 280 at the Mountain Brook exit. She will meet you with a goodie bag when you get there. They're the nicest people. And if you walk out the back gate about 50 feet into Mountain Brook Village, check it out, man. If you're looking for a place to stay, I love this lady. And her godson, Darrell Williams, was a starting linebacker at Auburn. Her nephew, Trendon Watford, great basketball player, played at LSU. So let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. We got Dr. Bill Hardgrave and Kevin Scarbinsky here. We're going to talk about what's going on from a president's perspective in this world that we live in, a university president. And Kevin has been doing a lot of work down in Birmingham about what's going on with UAB. And Dr. Hardgrave, Kevin Scarbinsky here. You probably read him before in your many years living down on the plains. Doc, Memphis recently put a proposal together to go after the Big 12. They're going to land somewhere. When you got AutoZone money, Lowe's money, FedEx money, it's going to happen. But what's the next step? What do you do from here? Because you're the kind of guy, I know you, no means tell me more.
Look, we're just trying to position ourselves to be the very best we can be, on and off the field, academically, athletically. And, this is, as you guys talk about all the time, the world of collegiate sports is insane, right? I mean, it's just in the past, 4 or 5 years, who would have thought we would be where we are now? And so it's funny when I listen to pundits who say, well, this is what's going to happen. Look, if I knew what was going to happen in college athletics, I'd write it down on a piece of paper and sell it and get out of this president business because, nobody really knows. Although the one common thread seems to be over the next 4 or 5 years, the separation from a top group of universities in college programs. That group is going to separate themselves further and further and further from that next group. Now, whether that top group's the P4 or that's a separate kind of conference, I don't know. But what I want to make sure that we are positioned to be in that top group as that separation occurs, because I think we'll reach a point that the gap between that top group and the next group is going to be so wide that if you're on the bottom group, you will not be able to make that jump to the top group because you're just going to get further and further behind. And that's in the recruiting of athletes and drawing fans. That's where I believe it's going. And we're kind of banking on, we've got to be in that top group as the separation gets worse.
Have we lost? Is Rob frozen?
That's the first time I've ever seen Rob be quiet for more than.
Rob, if Rob's speechless, there's a technical difficulty somewhere. Dr. Hardgrave, I'm interested in what your view is of where things are going. Could you envision when this next seismic shift hits, and you've wisely, pegged it in 4 to 5 years when a lot of these conferences' television contracts expire, current contracts. Could you envision a power conference or multiple power conferences jettisoning any of their current members who might not pull their weight, who might not be as strong in as many areas as Memphis is?
Kevin, I think a few years ago that would have been unthinkable, right? For a conference to say, you know what, you're not really worthy of being with us. But look, let's be realistic about this. What's driving all of this? It's the media money, right? And look, every school, there is a value placed upon them by the media companies. We know what our value is, right? That was part of what we did as our homework is what is our, what's an assessment of our media, right? I mean, how valuable are we? And this idea of equal distribution, of the media contract among all partners, we're already starting to see cracks in that. And I think we'll continue to see that where, we will have situations where schools are paid based upon the value that they bring to the conference. And certainly could be, Kevin, a situation where if a school really provides no value or below a certain cutoff value, they could be asked to leave. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and Dr. Hardgrave, you look at, and Jackie Sherrill made this comment on the show several times. He said you could see 65 having a national championship, the other 69 or 70, whatever, have a national championship. He said either one of them, it's going to matter just as much. But what I don't want to see is one area of the country just wiped off the map or conferences wiped off the map. I love waking up on football Saturday. Of course, we got football, college football now, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. It doesn't matter. I just love the game. And I don't want to lose that. Do you get the sense from talking to presidents around the country that they're in this fight for the full 60? Or some of them, hey, this is just not worth it? I hope that doesn't happen.
I think the short answer, Rob, is yes. There are these conversations about, look, if you're going to be viable, if you're going to, be on a national stage, you're going to have to be in this group up here. And if not, you're going to be relegated to, the less viewable time slots or streaming. And, look, there's still a lot of value, I believe, to linear TV. I think a big part of our audience still relies upon that linear TV and not just streaming. So if you get relegated to streaming only, I don't think that's a good thing, right? In today's environment, and certainly going forward, I think the linear is going to continue, especially as you look at the demographics in the country. Right? We're an aging population, and people my age and older, we still like to watch linear TV, and I think we'll continue to see that, right? Of seeing those games, you turn it on at a certain time at a certain channel and watch it rather than having to figure out how you stream it. I think there's going to continue to be value in that.
Good.
I think,
right, Kevin,
Dr. Hardgrave, a lot of people looking at least what was reported to be your package of your offer to the Big 12 to join that conference were surprised that they said no, because obviously you have a lot of resources at Memphis, you have a lot of support, a lot of corporate support, you have history. Were you surprised that they declined your offer?
Well, I'm not going to characterize it as they declined, right? I think they had a conversation about it, and the conversation didn't go the way that we certainly would have wanted it to go. But nobody told me no. We certainly didn't get a yes, but I think there was good consideration around what we were able to do. And look, we decided. Some people ask me, well, why now, right? I mean, why now? Well, again, I'll go back to why now is the gap, right? Is we see that gap coming, and we're trying to, stay up, with the top group so the gap doesn't get wider. And that's why now, right? Because we know, Kevin, with a lot of these media contracts expiring in, 2030, 2031, and so forth, that, in 2028, 29, 30, they start looking at, what's going to happen. And we wanted to be in there so that we had 2 or 3 seasons, in a new conference, if we were going to be there, to show that value once we get in that conference. So that was why we really made the push currently. But look, we did everything we needed to do. I thought, we offered to not take a distribution, a share. So no, we didn't dilute the existing shares, which, I think most every conference would say, look, it's hard to bring somebody in if you're going to dilute everybody's share. We certainly had corporate sponsors who were willing to come, and support the things that we were doing. And look, I de-risked it as well. Is that, at the end of this, if we're not adding value, we'll leave. And that, Kevin, it goes back to your question earlier. Do you think you see a situation where schools could be asked to leave? And I kind of de-risked it by saying, look, if we're not adding value, we should be asked to leave.
Yeah, I got to say that we saw Temple one time be, I think, asked to leave their conference, and then they roared back, with some pretty good seasons in football. But you're not just the average bear, Dr. Hardgrave. You've got a PhD in information systems, 17 years at the Walton College of Business at University of Arkansas, 12 years at Auburn. You took the College of Business at Auburn to another level. From 2010 to 2017, enrollment increased 47%, which begs me to ask this next question. How important is the healthy marriage of athletics and academics? Because you win a national championship your first year as the dean. You got Mr. Louder on your side, and you took that to a level that's never been seen before. Now, at Memphis, same thing. Are you trying to build that same kind of a coalition?
We are, and that's, we had we have a great board of trustees here, by the way. I have the best board of trustees in the country. And, when I came in, we were really faced with a decision of, based upon where we've been historically, and as an R1, a top research university now, of, how do we best position ourselves nationally? And the trustees, told me, look, take us down the path of a nationally recognized public research university. Well, part of that national recognition, right, is getting eyeballs on us. And we know through sports is a great way to do that. And that's one of the things that we look at when we look at conferences. And look, the American is a great conference. So I hope nobody listening to this thinks that our push to look at the Big 12 was a disrespect to the American. It's not. It's just that we look for every opportunity that we believe can make us better and make us more viable and visible on a national stage. And we believe the Big 12 at this point does that for us. And look, I saw that, Rob, when I was at Auburn, and I'm going to go back and tell a little story there about what the schools that are in the conference and the conference you're in makes a difference. When I went to Auburn, was the Texas A&M was just coming into the SEC, right? That was 2010, and I think they joined that year, right?
So it was right after 2012.
Yeah, 2012. So in 2012, when Texas A&M joined the SEC as a feeder state to Auburn University, Texas was not in the top 15 or 20 of the states. Think about that, right? I mean, Auburn, almost half the students were out of state, and Texas wasn't even close to the top. Once Texas A&M came in and we started playing Texas A&M, and Auburn got exposed to an audience in Texas, in 7 years, they went from being outside the top 15 to being I think they ended up being the number 2 state behind Georgia as feeders to the university. And now, look, it's not all attributable to that, but it is a huge chunk of it, because in the Houston area, in particular, around that area, students were saying, hey, I like this Auburn, this Auburn team and this Auburn university. Look, I want the same thing for the University of Memphis. I want us playing on a national stage all the time. Now, look, we've been very fortunate that we get carried on major networks, both our football and our basketball. Last year we ended up top 25 in both men's basketball and football. which means we had a lot of primetime, games on ESPN and others that carried those games and gave us, lots of eyeballs. But we need to continue to push that, because I know what it means for the university and the academic side of it. When we can start drawing students from all over the country, when we start building that reputation by the company we keep, athletics is a huge part of who we are and how we can really execute our strategy.
Front porch to the whole world.
Yeah,
You're right.
UAB
Kevin?
certainly here in Birmingham saw that when they reinstated their football program, and their enrollment increased for a number of consecutive years, especially as they were having success in Conference USA. They were playing for conference championships. They were winning conference championships. It's dropped off a little bit in the last few years. They've struggled. They've been good in basketball. They've struggled in football. I'm interested, Dr. Hardgrave, in what went into the thinking of the American Conference in terms of this requirement. And I believe the presidents voted on it, and correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's requiring each school within the conference, with the exception of Army and Navy, I believe, to devote at least $10 million over the next 3 years, not per year, but over the next 3 years, to direct payments to student athletes, revenue sharing, academic assistance, financial assistance that you couldn't provide before the Supreme Court ruling of 2021. What went into that thinking, that number? Because that doesn't sound like a lot, and it may not be a challenge for Memphis, but I can see it for certain schools, including UAB, that could be a challenge to hit that threshold.
Yeah, it really was just about signaling to everyone that we were serious about being a great conference, and that everybody had to participate, and everybody, you just couldn't sit back and say, you know what, we'll let the Memphises and the others invest and we'll ride along. Tim Pernetti, who's our commissioner, man, he has just done a phenomenal job since he joined the American. And, he really wants to elevate the entire conference. And I applaud him for that. And we'll do everything we can to support that lift. And that was just, Kevin, that was just a small way of going, hey, look, everybody needs to be contributing. Everybody needs to participate. And yeah, for us, I mean, that was, we will blow through that. We'll blow past that number the first year, in what we're doing with Rev Share. But for others, it really is making a commitment to invest in the sport, so that if you're a part of the American, you need to invest. You must invest to be part of the American, and to, we want to be competitive. We want everybody to be competitive, right? And I look at basketball last year, and it's a shame that we only got one school in, and that's not acceptable, right? We're a better league than that in the American, and for us to be the only one that got in, and you look at UAB was tough last year, right? And we've got to get more schools in, and the way we do that is we've got to have schools investing in their athletic programs and being more competitive, right? So that we are, we're playing and beating good opponents, non-conference, and which you all know that's how we make, at least on basketball side. We make a lot of our year based upon our non-conference, and we just need the conference. And again, Pernetti is leading that effort to make sure that we elevate that. So that's the reasoning behind it, Kevin.
Dr. Hardgrave, you have conversations and you have incredible communication skills. I'm going to tell you, Kevin, I'm going to meet him for lunch today at 11:32 a.m. Central. Always give times like airline flights. People don't forget them. But he will walk across campus in that suit he's wearing so he can talk to the students that he is there for. That I have so much respect for you for that. And you have so many people watching, I know, that love you, and they just know what you are. And Joel Johnson will be there from Burr Cole Engineering. He's excited to see you. I got to ask you, you have conversations. We lost a great one, Fred Smith. I mean, first thing I said was, my mom used to babysit him when he was a kid. I mean, and think about it, Frederick W. Smith International Airport. That just sounds good, but you've had those conversations with him and a lot of the families in Memphis that I know and and when you talk about funding NIL, 95% of wealth in America is first generation. First generation employs, second enjoys, and the third destroys unless you make your kids work. When you talk to them about paying 18-year-olds exorbitant amounts of money in some cases, what are those conversations like? And how do you feel about it as a guy who has worked his what off from Clarksville, Arkansas, and it's a great story in itself.
First of all, it was a huge loss to the city of Memphis, to the University of Memphis, and really to the world with what Fred was able to do when he was here on this earth. And we had a celebration of life for Fred a couple of days ago, and it was 2.5 hours of, and it could have went longer, of people just testimonies of the difference that he made. And so much of it, you think about Fred Smith and FedEx and what's visible. That was the tip of the iceberg. 99% of the stuff that he and Diane did to help communities, to help charities, to help schools, nobody even knows about. And it's an incredible loss. He was such a good friend to the university. He believed that a strong university helped make a strong city, and a strong city helped make a strong FedEx. And so he invested heavily. He loves sports. His son Arthur was NFL coach and head coach at Atlanta, and now at Pittsburgh as I think he's the
offensive coordinator.
Yeah. And loves sports. His son Cannon played football here. I mean, he was all in on sports, and he believed in doing what we could to elevate our sports program. Again, Kevin, back to your question, or Rob, as we talked about earlier, just that makes a difference to the university, right? Strong sports, it helps make a strong university, and so they invested in, and they see it as a great investment in the university and the sports programs. Again, which helps the city, which helps FedEx. And FedEx has just been a phenomenal partner with us. And we'll certainly feel the loss of Fred Smith for some time.
Yeah, that business center where you have the trading and all the stuff there on campus is incredible. Kevin, you think about Birmingham, the people that have supported and made Protective Life Stadium and how it happened down there. It's unbelievable what a president can do to build a coalition. And 35,000 people in Memphis alone work for FedEx, Kevin. It's pretty big deal.
That tells you a lot. And you mentioned UAB. UAB is, a lot of people don't know this, is not only the largest employer in the city of Birmingham, it's the largest employer in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
It's about 30,000 employees. And if you include people whose jobs are indirectly affected by UAB's presence, it's close to 100,000 or over 100,000. I was just looking at some stats on that recently. Wow. And so UAB is obviously vitally important to this community, just as the University of Memphis is there. I'm interested, Dr. Hardgrave, in the American Conference's move to rebrand, to come up with a mascot, Soar the Eagle, and some of the things that Tim Pernetti has done to try to increase the visibility of the conference and that national profile.
Yeah, and I hate that the timing was terrible on the conversation with us around the Big 12 at the time that they were launching that, because people really did see that as a slight of us on the American, and I certainly don't. And I talked to Tim and I talked. They knew everything that you were doing, and so it was not a side against America. It truly is just an opportunity, just as I would with any of our academic programs here. If there's a way to make our academic programs better by a different accreditation, or bringing in these faculty that could do better, or investing certain ways, we're just looking for ways to how we better position ourselves again for what we believe is coming. But look, Tim is trying very hard to position the American as that next conference. And I think at one time, we were there, and then, we had some schools who left, and, and then the Pac-12 fell apart. So now there's a whole conversation around, the reconstituted Pac, whatever number, the Mountain West, the American. And I think it's clever on Tim's part to kind of re-energize, just the name, and, because people would say, the ACC, what is it? It's just the American now, right? It's just the American Conference. And and really try to just breathe a little, life and energy into the brand itself. And look, we see this with companies all the time, right? You need to refresh and re-energize that brand. I think that's what he's trying to do. Look, he is pulling out no stops in really trying to lift up the American, and we're going to do everything that we can to help him, certainly, because if we can lift up the conference, it lifts up everybody that's in the conference.
Yeah, we got a few minutes before y'all have to go on to get your day started, but got to ask you, Dr. Hardgrave, as a president, explain for Jethro Bodine in Platte River, Nebraska, who's sitting on the front porch watching this show right now, how the House settlement works of $21.5 million. Money doesn't just fall out of the sky. I know that's a shock to my kids and everybody who has kids, because it's got to come from somewhere. How do y'all, university presidents, what's the plan to handle it? That's a loaded
How much
question.
time do you have?
We're
3 days later.
Well, we're in a situation now where we have 18-year-olds making 3 times the salary of a university president. So it's honestly it's kind of crazy. But look, the reality is that we have an opportunity here to generate revenue and distribute that to the athletes. To ensure that we can put the very best product on the field and the court as we can, and NIL was intended to be one thing, and it ended up being something completely different, right? People forget the NIL was to, look, if you had your name on the back of a jersey, you had to get a cut of that. That's what it was supposed to be, and it just ended up being a pay for play. So really, at least this shines a light on that, right? And the money flows through. And I'll tell you one of the things, and I know we're running short of time, but one of the things that we had a lot of our supporters, athletic supporters, say, I don't like to give to this NIL collective, right? I want to give to the university and I want to give to the athletic program, but I don't like giving to this collective. So that will actually help, because we had people who kind of split their allegiance, either saying, all right, I'll give a little bit to NIL and I'll give a little bit to the athletic program, or some that just say, I'm not going to give to the NIL collective. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I think this will help now that it actually all runs through the university, right, and then flows out to the students.
Well,
Kevin,
before you go, I just want to say I've enjoyed the conversation, Dr. Hardgrave. And if I had one request from the city of Birmingham, whatever conference home you land in, if there's any way to keep the UAB Memphis football and basketball rivalries going. Hasn't been as much of a rivalry in basketball. I know Memphis has dominated there. But the battle for the bones has to be the best rivalry trophy in college football. We hope you can find it in your heart to somehow keep that going wherever your home becomes.
Battle for the bones.
Yeah.
It's great. And Kevin, I hope so as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, look, we got to do this again. And thank you so much, Dr. Hardgrave and Kevin, always being on here with us. This is, I think it opened a lot of eyes. I'm getting a lot of texts from people going, kind of the old Johnny Carson. I did not know that. Because what you said rings true. University of Memphis President, Dr. Hardgrave, thank you. Kevin as well. So we'll do it again.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. You
bet. I tell you one thing, Brendan, you look at what's happening in college sports. It's changing, but I just wanted to get it from a university president, a native of Clarksville, Arkansas, over near Conway. Dudley, Dr. Hardgrave was in Fayetteville for 17 years before Mr. Louder brought him down to Auburn to be the dean of the Louder College of Business. And Anki told me he's the first person in his family to finish past 10th grade. They all worked in factories. That's the American dream. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about that makes America the greatest country in the history of the world, along with people like you, a native of, Newport, Arkansas, Balch in the suburbs.
Yeah, we didn't have a hospital in Balch with our 60 people. We had to go to Newport to get born. So I was born in Newport. But Dr. Hardgrave, as you mentioned, was great up here. I'm happy he's getting the opportunity to lead. I'm sorry, it'll always be Memphis State to me. That's ingrained in my head, from and watching the games on tape delay back in the day, sitting in Balch. But yeah, I mean, got to listen to some of that, and it really is, as he said, pay for play and not what it intended to be. But we knew this wasn't going to work out the way they thought it was, because there's too many people out there with too much money and too much love and too much passion for sports.
Yeah, and I think that just the love of the games, the boosters, most of them though, they've worked to make that money, and they're going to become more tepid in this NIL stuff. I mean, it's some schools are going crazy, blowing through the money, but I think it's going to revert back to the free market will fix this. Just believe me, it always does. The free market will do what
Either
is
that, or
right.
we'll bring the National Guard in and get it taken care of.
That's right. That's right. We'll have to take extreme measures. And Dudley, I think about this right now in the SEC. We talked with, it was pretty cool. Monday, we had Pete Cordelli, national championship ring at Notre Dame. It was Ellis Johnson. He has one from Alabama. Real close call there at Auburn. 13 seconds left. But I was watching, by the way, yesterday, South Carolina, Alabama 2010. And Vern Lundquist, Gary Danielson were talking about, Ellis Johnson, and he's got that South Carolina defense amped up, and they're really doing a number on Alabama. And I'm like, Lawrence Ellis Johnson from Winsboro, South Carolina. We have him on the show. We asked Pete about second year in the Petrino system for Taylon Green. And I don't think people are putting enough value on that. What's happening in practice? Let's bring in Vince Ferrara as well. But what's happening in practice in the northwest corner of Arkansas?
Well, yesterday we had a smiling Bobby Petrino. A smiling Bobby Petrino is trouble for opponents.
Wow.
So he's excited about where his offense is compared to where it was at this point in the summer last year. Obviously, he thinks he's got a more experienced and better quarterback who can read situations, but quicker and do the right thing instead of the quick thing. And he feels like he's got a better offensive line. The wide receivers are a talented bunch. Not a lot of experience in the SEC, but a lot of experience in college football. In fact, one of the things that people are excited about up here, and it's not necessarily offense per se, but Cam Shanks, who was the nation's leading punt returner last year, is he's going to be back there returning punts this year. I'm actually going to see Joe Adams, who has the greatest or one of the two greatest punt returns, along with Ken Hatfield in Arkansas history. He's now a wide receiver coach at Springdale Harbor High School here. I'm going to talk to him a little bit about Cam Shanks and how it might start becoming punt return instead of punt catch again here.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, it's like no one tries to block kicks except Virginia Tech under the Frank Beamer and Bud Foster era. But special teams, you block a punt, you break the other team's heart. Vince Ferrara looking good, feeling good. Billy Ray, remember that in Trading
Haven't
Places.
you people ever heard of coasters?
Yeah, that's right. Who's been putting the coals out on the floor? Vince,
hanging in there. Rehab, man, it is something. It gives you a greater appreciation for what athletes go through. They have athletic careers to try to get back to after rehab. I have attempting for normalcy in life to try to get back to as my incentive. So,
is it harder? Is it harder than Hank on Breaking Bad's rehab?
I would say no. No,
We've been rewatching that show. That was tough watching him go. No, okay, 9, 10 steps. Here we go.
Yeah, it's the leg elevation. Like they want you to elevate, because I still have bruising and swelling and stuff from the hip replacement surgery. So you have to, and it's like all down my leg. So I have to elevate my leg way above my heart. So it's just in these weird positions, and you can only stay there for so long, and then icing like crazy, and then you just do it all day, and you go to physical therapy, you do exercises. So it's a full-time job, but you got to do it right, because if you don't, then you could have some lingering stuff. So I'm working at it.
Yeah. recovery, again, 85% of it comes the first 3 months. That other 15 takes the rest, 8 months, a year, whatever. But yeah, you're right. A true appreciation. Having Dr. Andrews on the show a few times, Mo, you really get it. What was really fun, Roman Harper was on one time this summer, and Dr. Andrews was the second guest on the Friday. And so we just rolled him in together, and he goes, "Hey, I hadn't seen you since you were at the foot of my bed after my second surgery." He goes, "How you doing?" He knew exactly the surgery he had done, gave him an extra 5 years in his career. Dudley, a smiling Bobby Petrino. He is a happy man. Now, unlike a smug, unhappy man, Chip Kelly, Bobby Petrino having a grin on his face, it is scary because he is a mad scientist. The offensive line, am I correct in thinking Sam Pittman's spending a lot more time over there hanging out with those guys? Because he is that kind of equivalent on the offensive line coaching as Bobby Petrino is as a coordinator and quarterback coach.
He's always been lauded as the offensive line guru. And I know that when you become head coach, you have to take a step back a little bit from what he's been doing. But I think once he got Coach Petrino in here, and once he's got the type of lineman that he really loves, this whole mobile stuff, skinny offensive lineman, which was here during the Chad Morris era, was not really a Sam Pittman type thing when he got in here. He's kind of, they, along with Eric Matos, have done a good job in revamping that. They've got some guys that are unbelievably huge, but also versatile. They're working right now on making sure they have the 7 or 8 you need to play. They're giving us a lot of that first 5 because, as Coach Pittman said the other day, there's a reason you have starters, and I'm looking for the 5 that are the best. And then you fill in with, what you have to do with, an extra guard, an extra tackle, all that. They feel good about that. The fact they have Caden Kittler, who's a center, who's actually played center before. The last few years here, they've had guys sliding down the offensive line and becoming centers. And Caden Kittler, you've got one who's played the position before. And I think they feel real good, even though they've had some good centers, here they have gone on to play guard and tackle in the NFL. They feel real good about the situation here that when you start, you got somebody who's going to call out the signals and knows what they're doing from the start.
Yeah. All right. Vince, up on the hill in Knoxville, I think there is a legitimate quarterback competition from what I can see. Mecklinger from Calvary Day School down in Savannah, Georgia, along I-95 near Richmond Hill. But is that true? I mean, you're closer than I am. Closer.
Officially, there's a quarterback competition. There hasn't really been separation or, high-level play. There hasn't been a guy just run away with it and grab it. There's different ways you could look at it. You can look at it as, well, then that speaks to the competition and guys elevating up to Joey Aguilar, who's a clear favorite going in, the transfer from UCLA via App State. Or you can look at it as, well, then Joey Aguilar hasn't been able to separate from 2 inexperienced guys behind them. So I think it's probably closer to the latter than the former. The quarterbacks have just been very inconsistent. They've had some good moments and they've had some ugly moments. They've also had drops from the wide receivers. Oh, by the way, the wide receivers have been really banged up. So they're thin, they're injured, and they're dropping a lot of passes. So not exactly what you're looking for right now, and not exactly what could help your quarterbacks. So what's happening is you have this mixed bag with your quarterbacks, and they're working with guys sometimes on the second team that are walk-ons they're not going to be throwing to during the regular season. So none of it really sounds all that positive right now. I'm not saying they can't get out of it. They've only had 1 scrimmage. They'll have their second on Friday, but that is those 2 areas, the quarterback position and wide receiver. There has not been clarity to come out of it, and it hasn't necessarily been super positive. You listen to, Josh Heupel, and he is positive, putting a positive spin on it. But, you see the routes on air, you see the drops, you see the inconsistency. Merklinger, I don't think, has had a super great camp. Joe Aguilar has been inconsistent. but probably the best of the group. And maybe George McIntyre, the true freshman, might have had maybe some more of the highlight moments, and maybe has exceeded a little bit more of what people expected, since he's just a true freshman. But he's still very thin, similar to Nico in build, about 6'5", 6'6", very thin. He's already put on 15, 20 pounds, but still needs to put on a lot more. The most talented, I think, of the three quarterbacks in the group, among considering their upside, but probably still not ready to see the field, and it might be a little dicey to trot out a true freshman. So I do think, by default or just through experience and the way it went in, I still think Joey Aguilar is the guy to beat in that competition.
All right, one more quick one before we go back to Dudley. Last year, it helped a lot as Nico Iamaleava kind of worked his way through the weeds to have a running back like Dylan Sampson out of Baton Rouge Catholic or Redemptorist High School. Talk about the running back room quickly before we go back.
Well, the running back room is very much a positive. I think running back, tight end, offensive line, those have all, I think, developed very positively and as good as you could have hoped in the preseason. So I started out on the two areas that are still question marks, but the other positions I think have been positives. You mentioned running back. They have two returning guys in Peyton Lewis and Deshaun Bishop. Peyton Lewis, his running backs coach, Darrell Sims, is raving about him and how he wants him, and he has been running like he did in high school. He was a track star in high school, and he didn't really show that breakaway speed last year. I think he was really thinking a lot. Physical back at 6'1", 212, but can really run. He's pass protecting really well. Darrell Sims called him a Greek god in how put together this guy is. I mean, 6'1", 212, rocked up, and has elite speed. I think he is going to have the best year of those running backs, but they really have five in the mix. Deshaun Bishop is the other one that could get the first carries. And then Star Thomas, a transfer from Duke, who is a completely different player than he was back in the spring when he first came in from Duke. And then you have a 4-star true freshman in DeJuan Morris, and then a 3-star true freshman in Justin Baker. So those are the guys in the running back room. Collectively, I still think they're going to be able to run the ball really well, even though they don't have Dylan Sampson. But the offensive line is better at run blocking than pass blocking, it seems. And they've still been able to run the ball on this really good Tennessee defense, so that's another good sign.
Clarence Beeks had the crop reports. Dudley has the hog report. Is the running back room similar in strength up in Fayetteville? Because you just know you're going to have an offensive line with Sam Pittman there, and you got a quarterback. And if you've got the luxury of some stud running backs,
apparently my dogs are saying hi to Vince's dog. But here's what I tell you: since since I was on here last Wednesday, the name Mike Washington has become the highlight guy of camp. He had 3 big touchdown runs and a catch in the scrimmage last Saturday, supposedly. But he is a guy from Eastern Washington who's coming in, and I thought Braylon Russell. In fact, I think I may have told somebody here, I think Braylon Russell's going to be the starter of the first game. I do no longer think that, because Eastern Washington's Mike Washington has transferred here and become a guy that the coaches, the other players, especially the quarterbacks, the offensive line, they just love him. He's got big playability. He's in that vein of 6'1", 212, plays about 220, I think, rocked up type guy too, but he has speed. And it's one of these guys that you never know how it happens, but this is going to be a guy that's going to have a big year for Arkansas. That was at a school that was not, looked upon as a big time school, obviously. And he's here, and now he's making an appearance. He's a guy, when we were reporting on his committing to Arkansas, we said, hey, this guy had a pretty good year last year, 800 yards. And then you get here and you see, and sometimes things just click at different places. And that is the positives of the transfer portal, the positives of the NIL situation. not everybody, like I used to say, there must be something wrong somewhere, rotten in Denmark, as they say, if a guy is transferring from one place to another. Now it's about salary caps and all that. He's gotten a wonderful opportunity, and the overall running back room, they've got 5 guys that they could go to, but I think there'll be 3 that get the majority of the playing time. And Mike Washington said, hey, I'm going to be the dude.
Yeah. And Vince, you talk about running backs. Years ago, they wanted 35, 40 carries a game. Give me that rock. Now, I'm okay with 12 or 15 because it's gotten in their heads. The NFL doesn't want you to come in with too many miles on the treads. If Vince is still, there we go. Vince, okay. So you think about the running backs in the SEC. I guess 10 years ago, you could reel off 5 or 6 names, and every one of them was potentially an All-American. Look around the SEC, and by the way, what a conversation talking football. 2 of the best, Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, Vince Ferrara, 99.1 The Sports Animal in Knoxville. Soon, he will be strong enough to help take part of a goalpost down the Cumberland Strip and end up at Gus's Deli or Pilot and have a couple of death dogs. He's on the mend, folks, but let's talk about that.
Yeah, the running back position in the SEC, I think, is strong. We've probably seen it stronger at times. I think the position of note in the league is the quarterback position. I think that's where you have your depth. Yeah. That's where the transfer portal has probably impacted the most. There are portal guys like Washington that Dudley was talking about, Star Thomas at Tennessee. So there are guys, but the bigger names, I think, have been at quarterback to add to this league. So I want to go back to you had mentioned how the running game had helped Tennessee last year with the passing game that wasn't prolific. It was a weird year. That really, Tennessee leaning on the run game really started in SEC play against Oklahoma because they were destroying people early in non-conference. Now, granted, not the toughest of schedules at NC State was really bad. So they kind of padded their stats a little bit and then really relied on the run game. But the run game was never really able to open things up for the pass game as good as it was. It was as good as it was in the league with Dylan Sampson's 22 rushing touchdowns. And in terms of number of carries, he was by far the dude there. This year, I think it's going to be much more by committee, and you're going to see it more spread out. So it's going to be kind of what you were alluding to, carries in the teens as opposed to Dylan Sampson, at 25 plus, maybe a few catches out of the backfield, that type of thing. It will just be a different style. But Tennessee has got to hit some big plays in the passing game. And that Joey Halsley, when I talked to him last week, and I said, how can you guys get more big plays in the passing game? And he said that was our number one focus of the offseason is teams will play 8-man coverage against us because they don't want to give up big plays. So their teams are giving up those rushing yards to Tennessee because they don't want to give up those big plays. So can the yards that they're able to get, can that lead to winning again? I think if they do the exact same thing as last year, I don't think this will be a playoff team. I think they have to have more in the pass game, and they probably would be better off if they're a little bit better in the pass game and maybe take a slight step back in the run game, because then that means teams are a little bit more in a bind on how to defend them versus just playing in coverage and say, well, we'll take our chances giving up some yards.
Dudley, similar question to you.
I think we definitely are not up here thinking that there's a fine difference between the playoff team and not. They're just trying to get back into 8 to 9, 10 wins, and that'll be tough this year, obviously, with the schedule and 31 transfers, 19 freshmen. That is, my Newport math is right. That's 50 new players out of 85 on a team. One of the situations I do think is much better, though, since we're kind of Arkansas, Tennessee here, obviously, when Taylor Green got hurt last year, Malachi Singleton came in and was able to push to the end, beating Tennessee. He's no longer here. The third string quarterback back then, KJ Jackson, not KJ Jefferson. This one's skinnier and left-handed instead of big and right-handed. He has been another guy in camp that has gotten them very excited. And I don't think they're going to have to push Taylor Green to play, every game. That they want to get him in, get him some experience, because Taylor Green got beat up last year. A lot of the coaches have said, during their press conferences throughout this I can't say fall, this August, that he, they're surprised he even played last year. He kind of gutted it out. They want to make sure they don't get him beat up this year, and they believe they have somebody in KJ Jackson, who is a guy that they're going to be able to give some snaps to early, and there'll be no drop-off, even against these teams that, are loaded up on their schedule, and especially that 3-game stretch with Ole Miss, Memphis, and Notre Dame.
Yeah, and looking around the league, if you look for one of the schools, I think that's got a complete offensive line, starting with Jake Slaughter at Florida, and their quarterback, DJ Lagway, running back Jaden Ball, who's strength-wise a freak. I don't know if he made Bruce Feldman's list, but guys, and by the way, I send Venmos a lot. I don't put any description on there. I just write thanks. What is John Mateer thinking, lending anything to the possibility of a problem? I think this kid's going to be a hell of a player at Oklahoma, but my point is they're bringing him in. It looks like a real pass-heavy offense, Vince, at Oklahoma. In the SEC, you got to have balance.
You want to bet on it?
Yeah, that's right. You want to bet on it? What is a healthy balance, Vince, for a team in the SEC? I'm not sure what Georgia was last year, but their receivers led the nation with 37 drops, but they still won the SEC.
Yeah, Oklahoma is banking on maybe the highest rated running back in the transfer portal, and Jaden Knott from Cal. So they're hoping that, and plus they did again address their offensive line. Didn't necessarily pay off as much last year, but did it again this year. Well, if the offensive line is better and they feel like they have a playmaking running back, then they can have some more balance on offense. And don't sleep on the fact that Mateer can run. Because he's going to impact that run game a lot. So they need balance. I think it'll be it'll still be pass first at Oklahoma, but that you do need balance. The best teams are balanced, and even Georgia didn't get especially great quarterback play. They had a bunch of drops. They weren't as dynamic running the ball as they typically are. And they still won the SEC, and they were still one of the best teams in the country. So it just shows you that they have so many other ways to win, and that defense could carry you. That you don't have to be perfect necessarily if you have the elite talent, but most of the rest of the league is not there. So you do have to have that balance.
Yeah, and before we go, both of y'all, the SEC right now, you can come up with the top 6. And it doesn't have to be in any particular order. And you can make a case for the next 5, and then that third group of 5, all of them at least making a bowl game. Can you remember, Dudley, the conference being this strong, top to bottom, a lot like it was last year?
It's tough. Now you've got 16 teams, and you have to balance that a little bit, I guess. But I do think that the SEC might not be as strong 1, 2, 3, but is stronger from May for sure 1 to 8, and May in I guess it's now 14, 16, whatever. I do think that if you've got an SEC team on your schedule, when Diego's talking about it, we can win a national championship if this kind of stuff happens, then I think that's kind of a sign. Number one, that he has tons of confidence, and number 2, that you get a win over an SEC team, it's going to mean even more to you now.
Yeah, and even with an 8-game schedule, while the Big Ten wants us to play 9, I mean, really, each of them have maybe 3 tough games a year.
Let me put on my glasses and see if I care what the Big Ten thinks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Give me $1. Vince, think about what Dudley just said and kind of dovetail off of that.
Yeah. Well, he mentioned Vanderbilt. I mean, when Vanderbilt gets votes to win the SEC, then that should tell you how deep. Oh, wait, they do every year.
Some guy, we don't know. whoever it is.
They actually got 2 this year. They got as many as Florida did and 1 less than Oklahoma. What are we doing? It doesn't matter that Diego Pavia is talking a big game. It's different. It's not reality. So, 11 teams did get votes for SEC champion. There were 11 SEC teams, 10 in the AP top 25 poll. Interesting, they had Tennessee 10th in that group, but there's been some discrepancy on Oklahoma, on Ole Miss, on South Carolina, on Tennessee. That shows you the depth. You can make a great case for a lot of these teams to have a much improved year. That to me tells me that you do have the depth. I'm with Dudley. I think the teams at the top are a little bit more flawed from the SEC. I mean, Texas at number 1, I would agree with, but they lost one of their potential starters on their offensive line for the season. Do they have enough depth to overcome that? Georgia, and then you take a step back after that, it's probably LSU, Alabama in either order. And then you get into the next group, which is where a lot of the differing opinions are. You can make a case for a lot of teams to be improved in this league. I think there'll be it'll be a really good deep year for the league, but you might not see, the number 1 team in the country almost every week of the poll like we're kind of used to seeing most seasons.
Yeah, weirdest stat before we go. Alabama's starting 5 offensive linemen, which includes Caden Proctor, who weighs 380 pounds. Looks like he weighs about 320. And Parker Brailsford. 4 of the 5 starters for Bama on the offensive line allegedly bench over 500. We don't hear stats like that anymore. We go back to the early 80s, the 83 Texas team. Every starter was benching over 400. So I guess they're getting stronger. But, guys, Vince, you got a great show. Catch him on the Sports Animal in Knoxville, Dudley Dawson, hogville.net. What an honor and a privilege having guys like y'all on. Have forgotten more than the collective Western civilization knows about your schools and the game. And we will do it again next week. Thank you so very much. This was great stuff.
Thanks, guys.
You bet. Let me say, get out and about. Poplar and Houston Levy, LandersFordMemphis.com. Ask for our friend Brad Bellamy, the general manager. They've got the 25 Expeditions in, the F-150s, the Mustangs, these Broncos, man. They've got the Sasquatch package, all the off-road packages, the Sport Bronco. They are absolutely the Bronco. Ford outdid themselves on these Broncos. I love them. Okay, get out there, get behind the wheel, check them out. Poplar and Houston Levy. If you didn't buy your last vehicle from Landers, yeah, you probably paid too much. And they're right down the street from our good friends at Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville. It's easy to get to. You live in Memphis, Germantown, Fayette County, Marshall County, DeSoto County. It's so easy to get there. Largest selection of boots, over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots. And they're bringing in new stuff every day. I get out there every week. Man, you will love this store. Filson, Barber, Ariat, Stetson, Old South, Devil Dog jeans, kids' boots. If you're looking to get your kids, your grandchildren boots, they've got a big selection of boys and girls' boots as well. Great looking women's clothing and the polymer clay earrings. They got some of the coolest earrings and the handmade leather belts by the Amish. They sell those out there. They're great looking boots, man. You won't believe it. And that turtle box right there, you drop it in the water. As long as you click the seal, it still plays. And they've got these new workout shorts called 10,000, made by a U.S. Special Ops group of guys. They are the best workout shorts. Trust me, I've got them. You know the other brands. Get you some 10,000. And look, the Lights Out gummies work. And Rumble Boxing. Hey, how we fight is how we live. Union and McLean. Hey, most often we see the face of Christ. We'll see you later today with AU Undercover on this channel. Thanks for watching, everybody.